The text highlights the deepening music crisis conveyed by China Crisis File. There is a growing number of urgent voices from citizens. Families are currently placed in extreme conditions, with reports indicating that some are struggling to even secure a single meal. It is said that some households are unable to prepare even 200 yuan for emergencies. By 2025, reports suggest that many workers will only have received a mere 8 months' worth of salary. This shocking reality is vividly illustrated by the sight of people forced to live on the streets along the Second Ring Road in Beijing. The situation of homelessness can no longer be concealed. Living itself has become a harsh struggle. Job seekers over 35 are effectively being shut out of the market. One job seeker lamented that although they had interviewed with multiple companies, the offered salaries continue to plummet. Even in Beijing, it has now become a challenging feat for experienced workers to find jobs that pay 8,000 yuan a month. On the interview scene, situations arise where dignity is compromised. Employers are taking advantage of the conditions where new graduates are willing to work for monthly pay, cornering job seekers. There are accounts of being pressed with questions like, "Why should I pay you 8,000 yen? Explain your reasons," resulting in feelings of humiliation. Moreover, harsh conditions include a long probation period of 6 months during which salaries are reduced by 20%. Take-home pay barely reaches 5,000 yuan, and job security is non-existent. The atmosphere in the town is gloomy. From industries to freelance work, smiles have disappeared from people's faces. The harsh economic reality is robbing people of hope. Inside companies, the situation is extremely fluid and cruel. An HR officer with 11 years of experience at a listed company shared their harsh experience. After processing the layoffs of 685 employees themselves, they ultimately became a target for downsizing. As they returned their computer filled with 10 years of work records and left the familiar office, former colleagues who had once planned layoff strategies with them averted their eyes awkwardly. The notice came too suddenly, leaving the workers in shock. A former employee expressed their feelings. It felt like standing on a bridge, choosing who to push into the river, only to have the bridge itself collapse and fall before anyone else. This ironic episode symbolizes the unsettling reality of today's Chinese economy and the persistently high unemployment rate. According to data released by the National Bureau of Statistics on December 15th, the urban unemployment rate is still cited as 5.1%. However, the actual feeling among citizens is far from this official announcement. Many believe that the actual unemployment rate is several times higher than the numbers published by the government. For job seekers, the job market is a harsh and ruthless place, with decent jobs becoming virtually non-existent for those over 45, many of whom are forced into roles like local security guards, cleaners, or delivery services. Middle-aged workers are blocked by an invisible wall of age discrimination and are being pushed out for ostensibly reasonable causes. This critical situation has rarely been reported as the serious reality it is. The pressure on this generation is immense, with elderly parents needing care above and young children needing upbringing below. Many are additionally beset by substantial debt. Economic distress is fracturing families, and rising divorce rates linked to living conditions speak to the societal harshness. The younger generation is also directly hit by this recession. The withdrawal of foreign capital and the relocation of the supply chain to South Asia is accelerating, with analysts warning that up to 30 million jobs could be lost over the next 3 years. Even the once glorious technology industry is beginning to falter. Major companies like Baidu and Lenovo have conducted large-scale layoffs. On the social media app Kobayashi, a 40-year-old former Baidu employee wrote about the sudden end to his 16-year career. Despite serving under 11 supervisors and dedicating his life to the company, all he has left is anxiety over unemployment and an uncertain future in Beijing. The myth of stability that once supported migrant workers has collapsed. In July of this year, a record 12.22 million university graduates, equivalent to the entire population of humanity, were released into the job market. Fear looms that 2025 will be remembered as a year of concentrated unemployment. On social media, cries for help abound. Desperate job seekers are pleading for any decent job, lowering their expectations to the utmost degree, stating that they would take anything, no matter how tough. Others have continued their search for months with no leads, sinking into complete despair. The cooling of consumption is also pressuring employers. Signs of distress are evident, with cracks forming in the financial system. More seriously, there is a growing trend of unpaid wages. It is no longer just a question of low pay. It's about not being paid. Payments are delayed day by day, ultimately leading some to work without pay for months. However, due to the dire job landscape outside, employees are unable to quit, falling into a vicious cycle of continuing to work despite the backlog of wages. One worker reported that their salary had not been received for several months, and even employees of state-owned enterprises have claimed they have gone without pay for nearly 7 months. Workers are facing a time of trials. While some fortunate individuals receive their monthly salaries, the reality is that other companies may only pay 4 months in a year. Still, they continue to show up for work with hopes of improvement, grappling with confusion and anxiety. The competition for jobs in Shanghai is incredibly intense. A netizen who was laid off in May revealed that despite sending out resumes every day, they have not been called for an interview even once. They face the unusual reality of competing for the same position against 3 former colleagues when applying for new jobs. The gig economy itself is also beginning to collapse. Once paid at 200 yuan per hour for live commerce, the remuneration has plummeted to between 50 and 80 yuan. According to employers, despite these low wages, there are still dozens of applicants, illustrating the intensity of competition. In new manufacturing bases, the situation is even more severe. Workers sleeping on the streets can be witnessed, and social media is flooded with videos reflecting despair. In December 2025, footage taken at East Station shows workers shivering under the cold sky, regretting their decision to come to this town in the middle of the night. A migrant worker from a difficult province stated that due to factory closures, he was forced to return home earlier than planned. He expresses that even though there is nothing to do back home, at least he wouldn't have to face death, considering it a better option than the current situation plagued by low wages and job scams. Legal scholar Yuan Erpiao recently hinted that this crisis has begun to affect the centers of power. According to him, only civil servants in Beijing are guaranteed several years of salaries, while those in other regions may only receive pay for 8 to 9 months by 2025. The financial pressure on civil servants, once considered stable jobs, serves as evidence that the economic crisis is spilling over from peripheral regions to the capital. Economists point out that the employment struggles for graduates are generating millions of unemployed individuals, leaving a highly educated middle class feeling hopeless and rendered superfluous. The back pay owed to civil servants in Beijing is seen as a definitive signal of the deepening recession rather than an isolated incident. China is now concurrently facing issues of unemployment, real estate, debt, and deflation. These pressures are triggering social unrest. In early December, wage disputes in emerging tech companies escalated into major clashes between police and citizens. Similarly, surveys showed hundreds of protests over entry bans on delivery rider groups, with many citizens expressing support despite government attempts at information control. Human rights lawyer Xiaoping argues that the root cause of these conflicts lies within the Communist Party's control system. The authorities are focused on suppressing those who voice issues rather than resolving the problems themselves. He warns that such social contradictions will continue to explode across all layers of Chinese society in the future.